The wind off Halifax harbor carried a sharp edge that night, rattling the glass panes of a little seafood restaurant tucked between a bait shop and a marina. Inside, the light was warm, the kind that softened the lines on tired faces. Noah Reed, 38, sat alone at a corner table by the window, a plate of fried haddock cooling beside a half-empty glass of ginger ale. He'd spent the day crawling through basements, fixing old pipes, and now he was just trying to eat, think about nothing, and make it home before his daughter fell asleep waiting for him. He didn't notice her at first. The woman in the cream coat, heels clicking across the floor, eyes scanning the room like she was searching for air. Then she stopped beside his table. "Excuse me, can I sit here?" Her voice trembled just enough to betray what her posture tried to hide. Noah looked up, startled. She was striking, mid-30s, polished, expensive, the kind of woman who probably never had to fix a leaking faucet herself. "There are other tables," he said softly, half smiling. She leaned closer. "Please, just play along. Pretend you're my husband. Just for a minute." Noah blinked, fork still in hand. "You're what?" She didn't wait for permission. She slid into the chair opposite him, her coat still on, perfume faint but deliberate, something floral with a chill of winter in it. "There's a man by the bar," she whispered. "Investor. He's been following me since a meeting this afternoon. If he thinks I'm alone, he'll corner me. If he thinks I'm married..." He glanced over her shoulder. A man in an expensive navy suit stood at the counter, glass in hand, staring too long to be casual. The scene made Noah's stomach tighten. He'd seen that kind of entitlement before, the kind that believed money excused everything. "All right," Noah said quietly. "What's the husband supposed to do?" "Just look at me," she said, forcing a smile as the waiter approached. "Like you've known me forever." So he did. The waiter hesitated, sensing tension, then smiled professionally. "Would you like to see a dessert menu?" Noah nodded, slipping easily into the role. "Sure, honey, but I already know you'll order the key lime pie and say it's too sweet." She let out a small, surprised laugh, genuine this time. The waiter relaxed and walked away. "Thank you," she whispered. Noah shrugged. "You owe me pie." For a few minutes, they sat in silence. The hum of conversation, the clatter of cutlery, the low jazz on the speakers, all of it seemed to fold around them like a stage set. Noah studied her cautiously. Her nails were manicured, but one was chipped. Her left hand bore a faint tan line where a ring used to be. Not married, not anymore. "You got a name, Mrs. Reed?" he asked dryly. "Clara Grant," she said after a beat. "Blue North Energy." The name clicked. Everyone in Halifax knew it. The Green Tech Company, revitalizing old coastal plants. She was its face, its firebrand. He almost laughed at the absurdity. The CEO of a multi-million-dollar company sitting across from a plumber with calloused hands and $10 left until payday. "Quite a husband you picked," he muttered. Her eyes softened. "You didn't ask for it, but you showed up anyway." The man at the bar moved toward the exit, glaring briefly in their direction before leaving. Clara exhaled, shoulders lowering. "He's gone," she said, voice small now. Noah nodded. "You're safe." For the first time since she'd sat down, she looked at him fully. "You didn't even hesitate," she said. "I've been in rooms where hesitation costs too much," he replied. Something flickered in her eyes, recognition, maybe respect. "You were military?" He nodded. "Once. Must have been hard coming back." "Harder staying still," he said. They shared a small smile that felt heavier than the words deserved. For a moment, the differences between them, money, power, race, class, faded into something simpler. Two people quietly tired of the world's noise. When the bill came, Clara reached for it, but Noah was quicker. "I've got it. At least let me..." He shook his head. "If we're pretending marriage, this one's on me." She laughed, softer now, the kind that carried warmth instead of armor. "You're not what I expected." "Neither are you," he said. Outside, the night had deepened. Rain brushed the glass, distorting the reflection of dock lights into trembling gold lines. Clara stood hesitating. She pulled a small card from her coat pocket. Matte white, clean black letters. "My office," she said. "If you ever need work, call me. We're always short on people who can fix what others ignore." He took it, fingers brushing hers briefly. "I fix pipes, not people." "Sometimes," she replied. "It's the same thing." Then she was gone, her silhouette dissolving into the blur of rain and streetlight. Noah stayed a moment longer, watching her cross the lot, heels clicking like punctuation against the wet pavement. When her car disappeared, he let out a slow breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Back in his truck, the engine coughed to life. The dashboard photo of Elena smiled up at him, a gap-toothed grin, marker stains on her cheek. He touched the corner of the picture, murmuring, "Almost home, kid." He drove through slick streets, past the harbor lights and the shipyard cranes that looked like frozen giants in the mist. The radio played softly, some old folk song about love and second chances. But Noah wasn't thinking about love. He was thinking about that moment when Clara's fear cracked and he saw the woman underneath, all nerves and courage, trapped by a world that still demanded she smile through danger. When he reached their building, he sat for a while in the idling truck. The card gleamed faintly on the passenger seat, her name catching the glow from a street lamp. Clara Grant, Blue North Energy. He should have thrown it in the glove box and forgotten it. Instead, he slipped it into his wallet, next to the photo of his late wife. Sometimes fate doesn't knock. It just sits down at your table and calls you husband. And as he climbed the stairs toward the apartment where his daughter waited with a nightlight and questions, Noah had no idea that this small, strange favor would pull him into a story far larger than himself. A story of truth, power, and the quiet kind of love that changes everything. Stay with this story till the end. You'll see how one act of kindness can rewrite a life. The smell of pancakes filled the small apartment before the morning light did. Butter hissed on the skillet, flour dusted the counter, and a slow jazz tune played from the old radio that still crackled on certain notes. Noah Reed moved through the kitchen with a quiet rhythm, a man who'd learned that routine could be its own kind of peace. At the table, Elena sat cross-legged on a chair that was too big for her, chin resting on her palms, curls bouncing every time she spoke. "Dad, can I have 3 this time?" she asked, watching him flip a pancake with exaggerated precision. Noah raised an eyebrow. 3? That's a lot for someone who's still shorter than the fridge. "I'm taller than the fridge handle," she argued, stretching her arm up as proof. He laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "All right, tall girl. 3 pancakes for the champion." The morning sunlight leaked through the blinds, catching the floating specks of flour like tiny stars. On the table beside Elena's plate sat a framed photo, a woman smiling, eyes soft, her hand resting on Noah's shoulder. Amelia. Elena glanced at it before stabbing her pancake with a fork. "Did you talk to Mom again this morning?" Noah poured syrup and nodded. "Every day." "What did she say?" "She said I burned the first batch again." Elena giggled. "She always said you cook like a soldier, not a chef." "Guilty," Noah admitted, sliding another pancake onto her plate. The laughter faded into a gentle quiet. Not sad, just familiar. For Noah, mornings like these were both balm and reminder. The apartment was small, the wallpaper peeling near the window, but it was theirs. Every nail in the wall, every coffee stain on the counter carried a piece of their survival. As he washed the pan, he noticed the business card lying near the fruit bowl. Clara Grant, Blue North Energy. The edges had curled slightly overnight, as if uncertain about belonging there. He told himself to throw it away after breakfast, yet he hadn't. Something about the woman, her calm, breaking like glass, her thank you spoken like confession, stayed in his mind. "Dad," Elena said between bites. "That lady from last night, who was she?" He froze for half a second. "What? Lady?" "The pretty one on your phone. I saw her name when I looked at your wallet this morning." Noah gave a mock frown. "You went through my wallet?" "I was just checking for candy money," she said quickly, syrup glistening on her chin. "So who is she? Is she your boss?" No, he said, wiping her mouth with a napkin. Just someone who needed help. Like pretend help? Like when you play Tea Party with me? He smiled. Exactly. Only with fancier clothes and less imagination? Elena considered that answer, squinting in her small, serious way. Will you see her again? Probably not, he said, though he didn't sound convinced. She nodded, as if filing it away for later, then went back to her breakfast. The radio hummed an old Stan Rogers song, something about sailors and second chances. Noah cleaned the dishes slowly, trying not to think about the card burning a quiet hole in the counter. By mid-morning, Elena was sprawled on the floor, coloring a paper castle while humming off-key. Noah sat beside her with a cup of coffee gone cold, scrolling through job listings on his cracked tablet. Another week, another round of maintenance calls and half-paid invoices, the kind of grind that kept the lights on and dreams small. The phone rang, unknown number. He hesitated before answering. Noah Reed. A pause, then a familiar, composed voice. Good morning, Mr. Reed. It's Clara Grant. He straightened instinctively. Ms. Grant, didn't expect to hear from you. Neither did I, to be honest. Her tone carried both restraint and weariness. You were kind last night. I have a favor to ask if you're open to it. I'm listening. Could you come by my office this afternoon? Blue North Tower, 11th floor, noon. He looked at the clock. Almost 10. His hands still smelled faintly of soap and syrup. May I ask what this is about? I'd rather explain in person. And before you worry, it's not another pretend husband situation. He chuckled under his breath. That's good. I'm not sure I could handle another round of improv theater. For the first time, her voice softened, almost a smile through the line. You might be better at it than you think. I'll see if I can find a sitter, he said. Bring your daughter if you have to. I like kids. They tend to tell the truth adults avoid. That line hung in the air long after she hung up. Noah sat for a moment, the quiet settling thick around him. He looked across the room at Elena, now pretending her crayons were knights defending the castle. Her laughter filled the space where grief used to echo. He took a long sip of cold coffee, then sighed. Looks like Dad's got an appointment, champ. She looked up, eyes bright. With the lady from your wallet? Maybe, he said. And it's just work stuff. Do I have to wear something nice? Not that kind of work, he replied, smiling. He rinsed his cup and set it upside down to dry. The habit came from the army. Leave nothing unfinished, even the small things. As he grabbed his jacket, he passed by Amelia's photo again. Her smile seemed to watch him, calm and knowing. I know, he murmured to it. Just helping someone. Nothing more. Outside, the autumn wind bit sharper than he expected. Clouds rolled low over the harbor, and the distant foghorn moaned like a memory. He started the truck, the engine grumbling awake. The card lay on the passenger seat, the printed letters catching light with each turn. He could have ignored the call. He'd promised himself not to get tangled in other people's chaos. But something about Clara, the way she'd said, favor like it cost her pride, pulled at him. As he drove toward downtown Halifax, the radio played quietly, a song about building something that lasts. He didn't know yet that what waited on the 11th floor of Blue North Tower would change the shape of his quiet life, that pancakes and promises could lead him straight into a storm big enough to test every truth he'd ever lived by. The elevator hummed quietly as it rose through the glass spine of Blue North Tower, the city shrinking below in reflections of steel and sky. Noah Reed shifted his weight, hands buried in the pockets of his worn jacket. He caught his reflection in the mirrored panel, broad shoulders, oil stains that no amount of soap could fully erase, eyes that had seen too much of war and too little of peace. He didn't belong here, and every polished surface reminded him of it. When the doors opened, a young assistant greeted him with the kind of smile trained to be polite, but not curious. Mr. Reed, Ms. Grant is expecting you, right this way. The corridor was lined with glass offices and silent, determined faces behind screens. The floor-to-ceiling windows at the far end framed the Halifax harbor, gray-blue under drifting clouds. It was beautiful in that distant, expensive way, untouched by rain or exhaustion. Clara stood by the window, her posture composed, yet restless. She wore slate-gray slacks and a white blouse rolled to the elbows, her hair pinned in a way that looked both effortless and deliberate. When she turned, the guarded poise from the restaurant returned, but softer now, more invitation than defense. "Noah," she said, gesturing to a chair, "thank you for coming." He hesitated before sitting. "You said you had a favor to ask. I'm guessing it's not about plumbing." Her lips curved faintly. "Not this time." She motioned toward the harbor beyond the glass. "Do you know what they call Halifax now? Canada's energy frontier. It sounds glamorous, but the truth is, it's full of people waiting for someone to fail." He tilted his head. "And they're waiting for you?" Clara nodded once. "My board thinks I'm a liability. Unstable. Unfocused. Too emotional." Their words, not mine, she exhaled. "I've spent 10 years building Blue North from nothing, and now they're circling because I happen to be single." Noah frowned. "You're saying being alone makes you less of a leader?" "In their world, yes." She turned back to him, eyes clear, steady. "They believe a woman who isn't anchored can't be trusted to steer a company." "Sounds like their problem," he said simply. "It becomes my problem when they can vote me out," she replied. He leaned back, waiting. She didn't dance around it. "I need a public partner," she said finally. "Someone steady, respectable, someone who makes me look stable." The words hung there, absurd yet strangely logical. "You're asking me to be your boyfriend," Noah said slowly. "Publicly, yes," she answered. "For a few weeks. Appearances at events, interviews, dinners, nothing more." He gave a low whistle. "You realize how that sounds?" "I do. That's why there will be a contract. No personal entanglements, just professional optics. You'll be compensated fairly." "And you picked me because—" Clara hesitated. "Because you're not from my world. You don't owe anyone here anything. You're calm under pressure and—" She stopped, then added softly, "You feel real." For a moment, Noah just watched her. The city gleamed behind her like another planet, cold and unreachable. "Ms. Grant, I'm a single dad who fixes leaky pipes. I'm not exactly red carpet material." "I don't need polished," she said. "I need grounded." The assistant appeared with 2 coffees, setting them down between them before quietly retreating. Noah's cup steamed faintly, the smell sharp and bitter. He wrapped his hands around it, letting the warmth seep in while his mind raced. "So you'd pay me," he said, "to pretend to care about you in front of people who already don't?" "Essentially." "And when the act's over?" "You go back to your life," she said. "Maybe with a job if you want it. We're launching a renewable retrofit program along the Atlantic coast. Skilled trades, veterans. Your background fits perfectly." He stared into the coffee, the steam twisting like a question he didn't know how to answer. "It's crazy," he murmured. Clara folded her arms. "It is, but so is letting them destroy everything I've built because I don't fit their mold." For a while, the only sound was the distant gulls and the low hum of the city below. Noah finally stood, running a thumb along the edge of the business card she'd given him the night before. "I don't fake well," he said. "Never learned how to smile for cameras." "I'm not asking for a smile," she said quietly. "Just presence, the kind that steadies a room." He met her eyes then, steady, searching, as if weighing the invisible weight of her request. "Why me, Clara, really?" "Because last night, when you could have walked away, you didn't." That landed heavier than she expected. Noah exhaled, long and slow. "I need to think about it." "Of course," she said. "Take your time, but I'll be honest. I need to announce something before the end of the week. The board meets Friday." He nodded, half turning toward the door. "If I say no, then I'll thank you and wish you luck," she replied, voice steady but tired. "And if I say yes, then you'll help me keep what I've built. And maybe," she added, almost to herself, "help me remember what I started it for." Noah left without another word. The elevator ride down felt longer this time. The city below glowed through thin clouds, cranes dotting the skyline like question marks. By the time he reached the street, drizzle had begun to fall. He pulled up his jacket hood and walked toward the truck. All the way home, Clara's words echoed in the cab. The mix of pride and exhaustion, the kind of strength that only looked effortless from afar. He knew that world from the outside. People born into power, pretending it didn't weigh them down. But Clara didn't sound like them. Hers was a loneliness he recognized. Back in the apartment, Elena was sprawled on the couch, crayons scattered around her. She looked up, grinning. "Did the fancy lady give you a job?" "Something like that," Noah said, loosening his boots. "Are you going to take it?" He looked at her small, curious face, the one constant in a world that shifted too easily. He thought about the rent due next week, the broken heater, the way Clara's voice had cracked when she said real. "I don't know yet," he said. But later that night, when Elena had fallen asleep and the apartment had gone still, Noah stood by the window watching the harbor lights blur in the rain. He thought of Clara Grant, alone in her glass tower, fighting a war she couldn't name, and realized something simple and terrifying. He wasn't sure if he was helping her for the money, or because, for the first time in a long while, someone had asked for his steadiness like it mattered. By morning, his decision had settled. He picked up the phone and dialed her number. When Clara answered, her voice was quiet, cautious. "Noah? I'm in," he said. "But one rule. Name it. My daughter comes first." "Always," she promised. And with that, two strangers on opposite sides of the harbor made a deal that would change both their lives. One born not of trust, but of necessity, and carrying just enough humanity to feel dangerously close to hope. The ballroom at the Prince George Hotel shimmered like a world, built to remind people they didn't belong. Gold light spilled from crystal chandeliers, violins tuned softly in the corner, and the murmur of Halifax elite blended into a low, expensive hum. Noah Reed stood near the entrance, one hand tugging at the stiff collar of his rented suit. The fabric itched. The tie felt like a noose. Even his shoes had that strange, new smell of leather he couldn't quite trust. Around him, people glided through the room like they'd rehearsed every gesture. He felt like he'd shown up to the wrong movie. Then Clara Grant entered. For a second, the noise dimmed, or maybe his mind just stopped keeping up. She wore a deep emerald gown that caught the light with every step. Her hair swept into a loose twist that framed her face without softening it. Confidence wasn't something she wore. It was something that followed her, like perfume or gravity. She spotted Noah across the room and moved toward him, smile practiced but eyes uncertain. "You clean up well," she said quietly. He adjusted his cuff awkwardly. "You make the rest of us look like we're here to fix the lighting." Her laughter, small, genuine, eased the tightness in his chest. "That's kind of the point." Around them the whispers began. The Foundation's board members, investors, and donors, all familiar with Clara's solitary reputation, turned discreet glances into open stares. Clara Grant? With someone? Cameras lifted, phones tilted. Clara leaned closer, her voice a thread beneath the music. "Remember, light touch on the arm, small smile, steady eye contact. Don't let them see you flinch." "Copy that," he murmured, slipping instinctively into soldier's tone. They stepped together into the golden light of the ballroom, and the room changed. People didn't just see Clara anymore, they saw them. The CEO, known for her precision, now walked beside a man who looked like he came from somewhere real. Broad hands, simple suit, a face that had known work more than mirrors. It was the image she'd hoped for. Strength without arrogance, grounded and steady. A reporter from the Herald approached, flashing a rehearsed grin. "Miss Grant, wonderful to see you. And you must be—" "Noah Reed," he said, offering a handshake firm enough to quiet assumptions. "Just happy to support the cause." "Ah, the cause," the reporter teased, eyes flicking to Clara. "And how long have you two been supporting each other?" Clara's smile didn't waver. "Long enough to know he makes a better dinner companion than most investors." The cameras loved it. The flash lit them up like a confession. Clara rested her hand lightly on Noah's sleeve, but when the reporter laughed and asked for a photo, she didn't let go. Dozens of bulbs fired at once, and in that brief strobe of light, something unexpected happened. Clara's fingers tightened around his hand, not in rehearsal, not for the cameras, but because her pulse had jumped, and she forgot to act. Noah didn't move. He only turned slightly toward her, just enough that the next photo caught a quiet truth. Two people who looked, for one impossible second, like they belonged together. The moment passed as fast as the flash. She released his hand, cleared her throat, and led him towards the tables. At dinner, he sat beside her while speeches droned about sustainability and innovation. The words rolled like polished stones, heavy but meaningless. Noah found his eyes wandering to the servers balancing trays, to the window overlooking the harbor, where the fog crept like a secret. Clara leaned in once, whispering, "You're doing fine." He smirked. "Wasn't sure I had a grade." "You're steady," she said. They noticed that. It's what I needed them to see. He studied her profile, the hard line of someone used to fighting quietly, the calm that was really armor. He realized she wasn't performing tonight for herself, but for survival. After dessert, as people mingled near the silent auction tables, a board member cornered them, a silver-haired man with the look of someone who'd never been told no. "Clara Frisch," he said, voice dipped in politeness. "We were starting to worry you'd burned out. But it seems you found balance." Clara's grip around her glass tightened, but she smiled. "I didn't find balance, Harold. I built it." The man chuckled condescendingly and walked away. Noah whispered, "That's the nicest way I've ever heard anyone say, 'back off.'" Her lips curved. Years of practice. When the speeches ended and the crowd began to thin, Clara exhaled as though she'd been holding her breath all evening. The tension in her shoulders eased slightly. They stepped out onto the terrace where the cold air carried the scent of rain and sea. Halifax skyline glittered beyond the glass railing. For a long moment, neither spoke. "You did good tonight," Noah said quietly. She laughed under her breath. "I spent the evening lying through my teeth." "Yeah, but you lied beautifully." Her laughter faded into something gentler. She looked at him, not as the man she'd hired, but as the man who'd made her feel, for a few hours, that she wasn't on trial. "Thank you," she said softly. "You made them believe it, even if just for tonight." Noah looked out over the harbor lights. "Guess we both did." And as they stood there, the city humming below, Clara realized her hand had drifted back to his sleeve, fingers resting where they had before. She didn't pull away this time. Inside, the photographers were packing up, the music fading, the world returning to its familiar noise. But out on the terrace, for one rare, unguarded moment, two strangers shared the quiet satisfaction of pulling off the impossible, and the faint, dangerous spark of something neither had planned for. Morning light spilled through the tall windows of Clara Grant's penthouse, washing the white marble floor in pale gold. The view stretched far across the Halifax harbor. Cargo ships, drifting in silence, gulls carving through the mist. Inside, the quiet was broken only by the soft hum of a camera crew setting up for a televised interview later that week. At the dining table, Noah Reed sat across from Clara, reading from a printed cue sheet. "How did you two meet?" he read aloud, trying to keep a straight face. "Do I say the real story or the fairy tale?" Clara looked up from her laptop. "The fairy tale, please. The real one involves a panicked CEO and a plate of cold fish." Noah grinned. "Exactly my point. People love chaos. It's human." "Human doesn't sell stability," she replied dryly, typing something. "Then what's our story?" She leaned back, crossing her legs neatly. "We met at a charity panel about community innovation. You were volunteering with a veterans housing project. I admired your commitment. You admired my spreadsheets." He raised an eyebrow. "That's the most romantic sentence I've ever heard." For a moment she tried to keep her composure, but the corners of her mouth betrayed her. The laugh came, soft, rare, Unguarded, Noah noticed. There it is, he said quietly. The human part. Clara's smile lingered, fading into something gentler. Don't tell the PR team. They'll write me up for emotional leakage. They returned to their notes, but the atmosphere had shifted, less like rehearsal, more like rhythm. Clara asked him to stand closer, adjust his tone, smile at the right cue. He obliged, but always with that glint of teasing restraint. Stop smiling like you're applying for a driver's license, she said once, half laughing. I thought we were going for realism. Not that real. When they took a break, the silence felt lighter. Clara poured coffee into 2 mugs and handed him one. You make this easier than I expected, she admitted. He sipped, eyes scanning the skyline. Maybe because I don't care about the cameras. They're not looking for me anyway. Maybe they should, she said softly, before realizing she'd said it aloud. He turned toward her, but before either could respond, the intercom buzzed. Clara frowned. Who? A small voice came through, high and impatient. Daddy, I'm here. You said bring my drawing, Noah blinked. Elena? Clara gestured to the assistant by the door. It's all right. Let her up. A few minutes later, the elevator doors opened, and Elena burst in. Pink jacket, curls bouncing, paper clutched in her hands. Hi, she chirped, staring in awe at the high ceilings. Whoa, your house is like a cloud. Clara knelt down to her level. Hello there, you must be Elena. I've heard you're the real boss at home. The little girl nodded seriously. He doesn't eat vegetables unless I say so. Clara laughed, genuinely this time, the sound echoing softly through the vast room. I brought you something, Elena said, unfolding the crayon-smeared paper. It's us. You, me, and Daddy. See? The sun's happy, and the house has no walls, because it's already warm. Clara took the drawing carefully. The figures were stick people, one tall with brown skin, one smaller with curls, and one in a green dress. Above them, written in a child's careful scrawl, Home, Love. For a long moment, Clara didn't speak. The child's simplicity, the honesty of it, hit something she didn't expect. Thank you, sweetheart, she whispered. This is beautiful. Elena beamed. You can keep it. I have another one for Mom. I mean, for heaven, she corrected herself shyly. Noah's eyes flicked to Clara, the weight of that tiny correction settling between them. Clara's voice softened. You're very kind to share this with me. Elena shrugged. Daddy says home isn't a place. It's people who don't leave. Clara's throat tightened. For years, she'd lived among people who came and went. Assistants, investors, reporters, all part of her orbit, none part of her life. And now this small girl, with marker stains on her fingers, was handing her the simplest definition of belonging she'd ever heard. She crouched lower, brushing a stray curl from Elena's cheek. You know, she said quietly, I think I forgot what that felt like, having someone who believes you're home. Elena smiled, matter of fact. You can borrow us, Noah chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. She's generous with her heart. Clara stood, folding the drawing like something sacred. I'll keep it here, she said, right on my desk so I don't forget. When Elena wandered off to explore the balcony, Noah looked at Clara. You okay? She nodded slowly. I'm fine, just out of practice. He smiled. Practice is good. You'll get better at it. Her eyes met his, tired, grateful, alive in a way they hadn't been in months. You know, for someone who claims not to fake well, you're surprisingly good at making this feel real. He shrugged. Maybe it's because parts of it are? Neither spoke after that. The morning light shifted, brighter now, spilling across the table where the drawing lay. 3 figures under a sun with a smiling face, a house without walls, and a single truth scrawled in crayon. Home equals love. For the first time in years, Clara let herself believe it might be true. By Wednesday morning, Halifax was humming with noise. What began as whispers on business blogs had exploded into headlines splashed across every feed. Blue North CEO's new boyfriend has a violent past. Who is Noah Reed? the mystery man behind the CEO. The story spread faster than any press release Clara Grant had ever crafted. Screens in coffee shops, phones on subway seats, office monitors, all carried the same photo. Noah, in his worn jacket, standing outside his apartment, eyes half-shadowed, the caption twisting him into a stranger. Inside her office, Clara scrolled through the articles, each one worse than the last. The words, bar fight, Toronto, assault, repeated like a chant. She felt her pulse pounding against her ribs. Noah stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the gray morning over the harbor. "They found it," he said finally. "That night in Toronto." Clara turned in her chair. "It's true then?" He nodded. "Yeah, 3 years ago. I was visiting an old army buddy. Some guy at the bar started running his mouth. Said things about single fathers, about my daughter. I warned him once. He didn't stop. You hit him?" "One punch," Noah said. He fell. Got up fine. We shook hands the next morning. No police, no charges. But someone filmed part of it. Guess that's all they needed. Clara's jaw tightened. She knew the playbook. Scandals didn't need truth. Just rhythm, repetition, outrage. Across the city, news anchors were already dissecting the optics of it all. A female CEO dating a man with a temper. Questionable judgment. Potential risk to shareholders. The same tired words she'd heard her whole career, now aimed at her heart instead of her work. Her phone buzzed. A text from Colin Fraser, her longtime rival and lead investor. "Tough week, Clara. The board deserves transparency. Let me know if you need guidance." She stared at the message until it blurred. Guidance, that was his code for control. Noah turned toward her. "You think he's behind it?" "Colin's fingerprints are on every whisper in the city," she said. "He's been waiting for a crack in the story, and now he's found one." He exhaled slowly. "Maybe I should walk away. End this before it hurts you more." Her head snapped up. "Don't you dare." He blinked. "You're the one taking the hits, not me." Clara stood, crossing the room until she faced him. "I've survived worse than gossip. But if I let them twist this into something it's not, then I deserve to lose everything I've built." He studied her, the steadiness under fire, the anger laced with exhaustion. "So what do we do?" She took a breath, the decision already forming like steel. "We tell the truth." Noah frowned. "They'll spin that too." "Then let them, but we'll say it first. Our version, not theirs." Within an hour, Clara had cleared the office. The PR team begged her to wait, to draft statements, to test focus groups. She refused. "This isn't strategy," she said. "It's honesty." They filmed in her living room. The light from the wide windows gray and natural. No makeup, no staging. Just Clara and Noah on the couch, a single camera set on a tripod. Clara looked into the lens, her voice calm but raw. "You've all seen the stories. They say Noah Reed has a past. That's true. So do I. So does everyone who's lived long enough to make mistakes and learn from them." She turned slightly toward him. "Noah, you want to tell them?" He nodded once, hands clasped loosely. 3 years ago, I hit a man. He called my daughter a burden. I shouldn't have lost my temper, but I did. I've carried that regret since. Not because I was wrong to defend her, but because I learned that anger only feeds people who already think they own the truth. The room was quiet except for the soft buzz of the camera. Clara spoke again, her eyes steady on the lens. "I'm not ashamed of standing beside someone who's made mistakes. I'm proud of standing beside someone who tells the truth." Noah looked at her then, and for the first time, she didn't look like a CEO guarding her brand. She looked like a person standing in the open, unarmed. When the video ended, she uploaded it herself. No caption, no filters, just the title. The Truth. By evening, it had been viewed nearly 2 million times. Comments flooded in, half cruel, half kind. Some demanded her resignation. Others wrote things like, "Finally, a CEO who talks like a human being." At a diner downtown, an older woman messaged the company's page. "My son served with Noah. He saved his life in Afghanistan. Maybe ask about that next time before judging." By nightfall, the narrative began to shift. The morning's scandal had turned into a conversation, not about violence, about grace, forgiveness, the humanity hiding inside headlines. In the penthouse, the city lights reflected against the glass walls. Clara sat by the window, exhaustion finally catching up to her. Noah stood behind her, hands in his pockets. "You didn't have to defend me," he said quietly. "I wasn't defending you," she replied, eyes on the dark water below. "I was defending the truth. You just happened to be part of it." He gave a small, tired smile. "Still feels strange being the story." She turned, her voice softer now. "Get used to it. The world loves to build its heroes out of accidents." Outside, the harbor rippled with light, fragile, imperfect, real. Inside, two people who had been strangers a month ago sat in the quiet aftermath of honesty, not knowing whether they'd just saved their reputations or set them on fire. But for the first time, the silence between them didn't feel like fear. It felt like peace, the kind that comes only after you've told the world exactly who you are and stopped apologizing for it. Rain tapped softly against the window of Noah's apartment, the kind of steady drizzle that made Halifax feel smaller, gentler, like the whole city was holding its breath. The living room was warm, mismatched furniture, a flickering lamp, and the faint smell of cinnamon from the pancakes Elena had insisted on making earlier that morning. At the kitchen table, Clara Grant sat with her sleeves rolled up, pen poised over a notepad, her hair loose for once. Across from her, Noah leaned back in his chair, a mug of coffee between his hands. They looked less like a CEO and a contractor, and more like two people caught somewhere between duty and curiosity. "All right," Clara said, glancing at the blank page. "If the press insists on a love story, we might as well give them one." Noah smirked. "You mean we lie convincingly?" She arched an eyebrow. "We shape perception. There's a difference." He chuckled. "You sound like every sergeant I ever had." "And yet, you're here," she shot back, smiling for the first time that morning. The room felt easier after that, the air less sharp. Clara started the exercise like a business plan. "Okay, first date. Public enough to be believable. Quiet enough to sound sincere. Where do we begin?" Noah tilted his head. "You love order, I love chaos. So, let's say a community center. You were giving a speech about renewable energy. I was fixing the sound system." Clara jotted it down, nodding. "That actually works. It sounds charmingly working class." He grinned. "You're welcome. And I remember you wore something practical. A navy blazer, sleeves rolled up, talking about solar panels like they were poetry." She paused mid-sentence. "That's oddly specific." He shrugged, eyes glinting. "I've seen you talk about your work. It fits." Their gazes met briefly. Something quiet passed between them, half amusement, half understanding. "All right," she said softly. "Then what happened next?" "You tripped on a cable," Noah said. "I caught you before you hit the floor. You said, 'I don't fall easily.' And I said, 'Then stop pretending you're flying.'" Clara blinked, caught off guard by how naturally it came. "That's actually good. Guess I missed my calling as a screenwriter," he said, sipping his coffee. The story began to build, details spilling out faster now, like memories they almost believed. A picnic by the harbor, a shared umbrella in the rain, arguments about which local diner made the best chowder. It was all fiction, but the warmth behind their words wasn't. Halfway through, Clara's phone buzzed with an incoming message. She silenced it without looking. Noah noticed, but said nothing. The silence stretched, comfortable. "Strange, isn't it?" she said finally. "We're fabricating a history for strangers to believe in, and yet it feels familiar," Noah finished for her. "Like we're remembering instead of inventing." She looked up, eyes softer now. "Does that scare you?" "No," he said. "It just means maybe the story's catching up to the truth." A small knock interrupted them. Elena peeked from the hallway, holding a roll of colored paper. "Daddy, can I show her now?" Clara turned, curious. "Show me what?" Elena scampered over, cheeks flushed with excitement. She unrolled a paper crown, uneven, covered in glitter glue and crayon stars. "It's for you," she declared, "because you fixed my dad's smile." Clara froze for a heartbeat. "Fixed his smile?" "Yeah," Elena said proudly. "Before you came, he smiled, but only with his mouth. Now he smiles with his eyes, too." Noah's throat tightened. He rubbed the back of his neck, pretending to look away. Clara knelt, taking the fragile crown with trembling fingers. "Can I try it on?" she asked. Elena nodded eagerly. Clara placed it gently on her head, the paper wobbling slightly. "How do I look?" "Like a real queen," Elena said, "but not the bossy kind." Noah laughed, the sound genuine, breaking the weight in the room. Clara smiled, not the practiced version she gave cameras, but the kind that reached the corners of her eyes. "Thank you, Elena," she whispered. "I'll keep it forever." The girl grinned and darted off toward her room, singing something about pancakes and queens. When she was gone, Clara stayed kneeling on the floor for a moment, still wearing the crown. Noah looked down at her, his voice quiet. "She's right, you know. You did fix something." She rose slowly, eyes shining in the afternoon light. "So did you." For a moment they stood in the soft hum of the apartment. No cameras, no contracts, just the fragile truth between two people who had built a lie convincing enough to reveal what was real. On the table, the notepad lay open, words scattered like breadcrumbs. First meeting, coffee, harbor, laughter. The history they were inventing was beginning to look a lot like the one they were actually living. The studio lights were cold, sharp, and merciless, the kind that revealed everything and hid nothing. Rows of cameras pointed toward a single chair on the stage of CBC's Voices of Change. Behind it, a soft blue backdrop shimmered with the skyline of Halifax. Clara Grant sat quietly, hands folded in her lap, waiting for the countdown. She had faced boardrooms tougher than this, reporters colder than this. But tonight wasn't business. Tonight was something else. The first time she would speak not as a CEO, but as a person who had bled, lost, and built again. 3, 2, 1, the producer whispered. The host, Marion Shaw, turned toward the camera with her practiced calm. "Tonight on Voices of Change, we're speaking with Clara Grant, founder of Blue North Energy, a company reshaping Canada's renewable future. But tonight, we're not here to talk about profits. We're here to talk about truth." The camera panned in closer. Clara's reflection glimmered faintly on the teleprompter glass, and she ignored it. "Clara," Marion began gently, "you've had a difficult few weeks. The headlines, the rumors. Why agree to speak now?" Clara inhaled slowly. "Because silence lets other people write your story. I've spent my life proving I belong in rooms built to keep me out. And somewhere along the way, I forgot that belonging isn't earned by perfection. It's earned by honesty." The audience, small, intimate, was quiet. Marion leaned forward. "Let's start at the beginning. Who was Clara Grant before the boardrooms?" For a moment, Clara hesitated. Then, like a dam breaking, the words came. "I grew up in foster care. My mother passed when I was 10, my father when I was 12. I learned early that survival wasn't guaranteed. You had to make it happen. I got a scholarship to Dalhousie, studied environmental science, worked nights cleaning labs, days tutoring other students, failed twice, started again twice." Her voice didn't crack, but her fingers trembled slightly. "When I built Blue North, I wanted to create something that would outlive the noise. But success doesn't erase struggle. It just hides it under better lighting." Marion nodded. "Some say your leadership is difficult to approach." Clara smiled faintly. "It should be. Change isn't polite. It's disruptive. But I never asked to be believed because I'm strong. I asked to be believed because I'm honest." The sentence hung in the air, simple, quiet, and devastatingly human. In the control room, the producer mouthed, "That's the clip." But Clara wasn't done. "And yes," she continued, her tone softening, "I made mistakes. I've said the wrong things, trusted the wrong people. I've been called too ambitious, too emotional, Too much of everything that makes women like me impossible to define. But I've also been called something I finally believe reticent, resilient. Marion looked down at her notes, then back up. You've mentioned Noah Reed in several recent statements. Would you like to say something about him? Clara paused. The studio was silent enough that she could hear the hum of the lights. Noah came into my life when everything around me was noise, she said carefully. He didn't try to fix it. He just stood there, steady, simple, or real. Sometimes that's all you need. As if on cue, a subtle movement caught the audience's attention. From the shadows at the edge of the stage, Noah stepped forward, jacket crisp, expression calm, but unreadable. The producer's headset crackled. He's not supposed to, but Marion lifted a hand. Let him. Noah crossed the floor with the quiet confidence of someone who'd seen worse storms than microphones. He stopped beside Clara, facing the camera. I didn't plan to be here, he said, but I've watched the world question her strength, her past, her choices. Let me make one thing clear. Clara doesn't need saving. She never did. She just needed someone to believe her truth was worth hearing. Clara looked up at him. A flicker of gratitude, surprise, something deeper. Noah continued, voice steady but warm. I've met soldiers who could rebuild cities and still crumble under doubt. I've seen women like Clara hold them up, then get blamed for being unbreakable. So here's the truth. She's not unbreakable. She just refuses to stay broken. The studio went still. Even Marion lowered her notes. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then the audience, not instructed, not cued, began to applaud. It wasn't the loud, hollow kind of applause meant for spectacle. It was slow, sincere, rising like a tide. Clara blinked fast, collecting herself. She turned back to the camera, voice barely above a whisper. Thank you. All I ever wanted was to build something honest. In my company, in my life, in myself. Maybe that's all any of us are trying to do. When the red recording light dimmed, the crew didn't move right away. Marion exhaled softly. That, she said, was real. Hours later, the interview hit the CBC site and spread across every platform. Voices of change trended for 2 days straight. Clips of Clara's words flooded timelines. I don't need to be believed because I'm strong, but because I'm honest. Investors who'd hesitated began calling again. Blue North stock rose quietly by 8%. But more than that, the public sentiment shifted. No longer pity or suspicion, but respect. And in homes across Canada, people who'd been told they weren't enough watched a woman sit beneath harsh lights and refuse to apologize for being human. For once, the truth didn't just survive the broadcast, it carried the signal. The hum of computer servers filled the small temporary office they had rented near the Halifax waterfront, a modest space with cardboard boxes for desks and coffee cups scattered like war relics. Outside, gulls wheeled against a pewter sky, their cries muffled by the wind off the Atlantic. Inside, Noah Reed and Clara Grant sat shoulder to shoulder, faces lit by the glow of 2 monitors. On the screen, lines of code scrolled endlessly. Digital trails, timestamps, IPs, the kind of language that only one man in the room could fully read. Liam O'Connor, Noah's old army friend, hunched over the keyboard, with the quiet focus of someone used to handling explosives. A cyber forensics expert now, he'd driven overnight from Fredericton when Noah called. So, Liam murmured, eyes never leaving the screen. You were right. Someone's been inside your internal servers for months. Metadata shows phantom logins routed through a private VPN. Corporate level, clean, but not clean enough. Clara leaned in, voice taut. Whose access? Liam typed, hit enter, waited. A single name appeared. Fraser, C. Administrative override. Noah exhaled sharply. Colin Fraser himself. Not directly, Liam said. He's smart. Used a proxy through one of your old assistants, Maya Singh. She left what, a year ago? Clara nodded slowly. She was good, diligent. I thought she went to work for a startup in Toronto. Liam clicked again. She did. A shell company,
owned by one of Fraser's consulting subsidiaries. She's the bridge. The air in the room tightened. For weeks, Clara had suspected Colin's fingerprints on the smear campaign. Now they had proof. But the question wasn't just who, it was how.
Far. Liam swiveled the monitor. They didn't just leak your emails, they altered internal data, performance metrics, funding reports, anything that could make Blue North look unstable. Classic manipulation? Then they planted stories to confirm it. It's surgical. Clara's jaw clenched. He wanted to destroy not just my reputation, but the credibility of every woman who might follow me. Noah rested a hand lightly on her shoulder. Then we hit back, not with spin, with receipts. Liam smiled grimly. Already working on it. I'll pull the transfer records and reconstruct the data trail. But you'll need more than digital evidence. You'll need a witness. As if on cue, Clara's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. A woman's voice came through. Quiet, shaking. Miss Grant? It's Maya Singh. Clara's eyes widened. Maya? How did you... I saw your interview, Maya said, her breath catching. You told the truth, even when they tried to bury you. I can't keep quiet anymore. Colin made me sign NDAs, said he'd ruin my career if I talked. But I kept everything. Emails, payments, instructions. I'll record a statement. You need to know what he did. Clara exchanged a glance with Noah, her voice low but steady. You're doing the right thing, Maya. Whatever happens next, you won't face it alone. That evening, they met in the dim light of the office, a camera balanced on a stack of books. Maya appeared on the screen from a remote location. A small apartment, blinds drawn. Her eyes were tired, but her voice was clear. My name is Maya Singh, she said. I worked as an assistant at Blue North for 2 years. After I left, Colin Fraser contacted me. He said he had investors interested in my insight. What he really wanted was access. He paid me to send internal reports and correspondence. Later, he asked me to forward specific drafts that painted Clara as unstable. I knew it was wrong. I did it anyway, until he started leaking them. That's when I realized he never meant to help anyone, only to destroy. Her confession lasted 10 minutes, raw, unedited. When it ended, Clara sat back, hands trembling slightly. Noah beside her, silent but solid. We send it to Naomi, he said finally. Naomi Tilrikar? Clara echoed. He nodded. Naomi Chen, independent journalist. We met at a veterans outreach last year. She's relentless and honest. She'll know what to do with this. 2 days later, an article appeared on the Atlantic Ledger titled, The Quiet Reformer, How Clara Grant Fought Back Against Corporate Sabotage. Naomi's piece didn't sensationalize. It traced the entire web, Colin Fraser's shadow companies, manipulated data streams, blackmail threats. It included excerpts from Maya's confession, technical analysis from Liam's report, and a single quote from Noah. Integrity isn't about staying clean when it's easy. It's about not folding when it's costly. Within hours, the story exploded. CBC, the Globe and Mail, even U.S. outlets picked it up. Public opinion turned fast and hard. Investors who had once pulled back began reaching out to Blue North again, not out of pity, but respect. Activist groups flooded Clara's inbox with messages of solidarity. A trending tag appeared. Stand with Clara. And somewhere in a corner office overlooking Bay Street, Colin Fraser watched the news unfold. His phone rang nonstop. Lawyers, partners, reporters, all demanding answers. By nightfall, Blue North's board announced an independent ethics review into Fraser's firm. By morning, his name was scrubbed from 2 corporate listings. In the small Halifax office, Clara sat beside Noah as the screen refreshed every few seconds with new headlines. She didn't smile, not yet. The weight of months still clung to her shoulders. Noah leaned forward, switching off the monitor. You did it, she shook her head. We did, and the truth did the rest. Liam raised his mug of cold coffee like a toast. To quiet reformers, Clara looked out toward the harbor, where the dawn light was beginning to break through the fog. No, she said softly, to the ones who refused to stay quiet. Outside, The city began to wake. Ships, docking, gulls calling, the sound of Halifax rebuilding itself piece by piece, just like the people inside that small room. The courthouse in downtown Halifax stood like a block of stone against the February wind, heavy, gray, and unyielding. The flag of Nova Scotia flapped weakly above its columns. Inside, the air buzzed with a mixture of nerves and anticipation. Cameras lined the front steps, reporters whispering names like prayers: Clara Grant, Colin Fraser, defamation suit. This was the trial the city had been waiting for, the clash between truth and power, between a woman who had bared her soul and the man who had tried to bury her. Clara sat at the defense table, dressed in a navy suit, posture calm but unrelenting. Vanessa Holt, her lead counsel, adjusted her glasses and glanced toward her client with a reassuring nod. Vanessa was known across Canada for her composure, a lawyer who fought with reason, not volume. Her opponent, Richard Calloway, represented Fraser, a man all charm and venom, a silk tie wrapped around a sharpened tongue. The judge, Justice Arlene McKay, entered precisely at 9. Her robe swayed slightly as she took her seat. A woman in her 60s, with eyes that had seen too many excuses and not enough accountability. "All rise," the clerk announced. When the session began, Calloway wasted no time. He rose, adjusting his cufflinks. "Your Honor," he began smoothly, "this case is not about gender, not about progress. It is about defamation, a reckless campaign waged by Ms. Grant and her associates to destroy a man's reputation for personal gain." He paced before the jury, voice dripping with confidence. "My client, Mr. Fraser, has spent decades building his name in Canadian industry. He is not perfect. Who is? But he is no villain. The defendant, however, weaponized the media, turning a private dispute into a public execution." Across the room, Noah clenched his fists beneath the table. Clara didn't move. When it was Vanessa's turn, her tone was quiet, but cut like glass. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard a story built on polish and fear. Ours will be built on facts. We will show that every statement Ms. Grant made was supported by documented evidence and corroborated testimony. This is not defamation. This is defense of integrity, of transparency, of truth itself." The first day unfolded like a storm, contained in walls of wood and marble. Fraser took the stand early, playing the part of the wronged man. He spoke of sleepless nights, career ruin, and public humiliation. His voice quavered just enough to sound human. But Vanessa was surgical. "Mr. Fraser," she asked, holding up a folder, "is this your signature on the transfer authorization to North Bay Consulting?" He hesitated. "Yes, but..." "And is North Bay Consulting the shell company through which confidential Blue North data was accessed?" He shifted in his seat. "That's speculation?" Vanessa didn't blink. "No, sir. It's in your own firm's accounting logs. Page 43. The courtroom murmured. Fraser's mask cracked, just slightly. On the second day, Noah Reid took the stand. He wore his best suit, one Clara had once called too honest for fashion. He sat tall, hands folded, eyes steady under the bright courtroom lights. Vanessa approached. "Mr. Reid, you've been accused of helping Miss Grant craft false narratives. How do you respond?" Noah's voice was low, but unwavering. "I'm a father, a veteran. I've seen what lies can do to people, how they eat at trust until there's nothing left. What we said wasn't crafted. It was lived. The truth doesn't need decoration." The jury leaned in. Even the judge seemed to soften. "Did you ever see Ms. Grant act with malice toward Mr. Fraser?" Vanessa asked. "No," he said firmly. "All she ever wanted was to clear the noise, to build something honest again." When Noah stepped down, Clara caught his eye, a silent thank you passing between them, the kind that didn't need words. Finally, it was Clara's turn. She rose, walked to the stand, and took the oath. Her voice was calm, deliberate. "Everything I said, everything we shared, it wasn't strategy, it was survival. I didn't attack Mr. Fraser. I revealed what I lived through. If that truth cost him comfort, Then maybe comfort was built on something false. Her final words hung in the air like the closing chord of a song. After 3 days of testimony, the case went to the jury. Hours crawled by. Outside, snow began to fall. Quiet, relentless. Inside, Clara sat beside Noah in silence, her hands clasped around a paper cup of tea gone cold. When the jury returned, every breath in the courtroom froze. The foreperson stood. We find in favor of the defendant, Ms. Clara Grant, on all counts. The sound that followed wasn't applause, it was release, a collective exhale that filled the chamber. Fraser's lawyers sat rigid. Fraser himself stared ahead, pale, lips pressed into a thin line. Justice McKay removed her glasses. This court has seen many battles of ego disguised as pursuit of truth. Today, it witnessed the opposite. Ms. Grant, your defense was not loud, but it was brave. This verdict is a reminder that courage doesn't always shout. Sometimes it simply refuses to lie. Cameras flashed as the judge stood. Clara blinked hard, holding herself steady. Noah reached for her hand, a small, grounding touch. Outside, the cold air cut clean and sharp. Reporters swarmed the steps. A journalist called out, "Noah, over here!" The man who brought truth back to the center. "How does it feel?" He smiled faintly, the wind tugging at his coat. "Feels like we just told the truth, and people finally listened." Beside him, Clara exhaled, watching the snow swirl under the courthouse lights. The war was over. The noise had faded. What remained was quiet, the kind that only comes after justice has finally found its voice. The thaw came slowly to Halifax that year. By late March, the last of the snow melted into the gutters, trickling down the cobblestone streets like silver threads. The harbor was waking again, gulls circling above, ferries crossing the water, and the faint hum of construction along the waterfront. For Clara Grant, it felt like the city itself was learning to breathe again. The courthouse battles were over. The headlines had quieted. And for the first time in what felt like years, silence didn't sound like danger. It sounded like peace. Blue North Energy had reopened its headquarters downtown, sunlight pouring through the glass facade that had once felt like a cage. Now, it was transparent in more ways than one. The new banners outside read, "Home is power." It wasn't just a slogan. It was a promise, a project that would bring affordable, renewable energy to low-income neighborhoods across Atlantic Canada. Inside, Clara walked through the bright open floor, greeting engineers, interns, and new recruits. No cameras, no press, just people rebuilding something they believed in. At the far end of the office, in a sunlit corner, now labeled Community Division, Noah Reed was settling into his new role. His nameplate read, Director of Community Integrity, a title Clara had insisted on, though he'd protested it was too fancy for a guy who still fixes his own sink. He stood before a small team, veterans, social workers, and young activists, laying out the first phase of the Home is Power project. "This isn't charity," Noah said, his voice steady, low. "It's partnership. We don't hand out solutions. We build them with the people who live here. Integrity means we listen before we lead." The team nodded, scribbling notes, but Clara, standing quietly at the doorway, didn't take any. She just watched him, the way he spoke without performance, how his calm steadied the room. He was never one for grand speeches, but every word he said carried the weight of truth earned, not borrowed. When the meeting ended, Noah caught her watching. "You could have told me you were standing there," he said with that half smile that always reached his eyes. "I didn't want to interrupt the prophet at work," she teased. He laughed softly. "Prophet's a stretch. I'm just a guy trying to make the world slightly less broken." "Then you're in the right company," she said, handing him a coffee. He accepted it, their fingers brushing, a simple, quiet gesture that said more than either could. That evening, the scene shifted to Clara's townhouse, once immaculate, now filled with the small chaos of life. Elena sat at the kitchen counter, legs swinging, coloring a page titled Our New Planet. Jazz drifted from the old speaker in the corner, Coltrane, soft and timeless. Clara stood by the stove, apron tied carelessly, stirring a pot of sauce that smelled of garlic and rosemary. Noah was beside her, chopping onions with more precision than she expected. "You cook like a soldier," she remarked. "I eat like one too," he replied, blinking away tears from the onions. "Discipline." Elena giggled from her seat. "Daddy cries when he cooks. It's so funny." Noah shot her a look. "Onions are emotional creatures, Peanut." Clara laughed, the sound soft and free. It had been so long since laughter felt like home instead of armor. When dinner was ready, they sat together by the window, the table small, mismatched, but warm. Outside, the spring light lingered over the harbor, a gold reflection rippling on the water. Elena twirled her fork in the pasta, then looked at Clara. "Is this what happy feels like?" she asked innocently. Clara paused. "What do you think?" Elena smiled. "It feels quiet, like the world stopped being mean." Noah reached over, brushing a curl from her forehead. "Then yeah," he said softly, "that's exactly what it feels like." As the evening deepened, Clara looked around, the half-finished bottle of wine, the candle burning low, the laughter still caught in the air. She realized that for all the storms they'd weathered, this stillness, was what they had been fighting for. When the dishes were done, and Elena had fallen asleep on the couch with a blanket draped over her, Clara stepped out to the balcony. The night air was cool, the city glowing faintly below. She leaned on the railing, listening to the distant sound of ships in the harbor. Noah joined her a moment. Later, 2 mugs of tea in hand. He passed her one. Neither spoke for a while. The silence wasn't empty, it was full, lived in, honest. Finally, Clara said, "It's strange. After everything, I don't feel triumphant. Just steady." "That's the point," Noah replied. "You don't win peace, you build it." She turned to him, eyes reflecting the soft city light. "And what are we building now?" He smiled. "Something that lasts." From inside, a soft hum of Coltrane's saxophone drifted through the open door. The city glowed, the harbor breathed, and for the first time in a very long time, Clara Grant didn't feel like she was standing on borrowed ground. She felt like she was home. 5 years later, the Atlantic wind still carried the same salt and light, but Halifax had changed. Or maybe it was the people who had. The Grant Reed Foundation now occupied a restored shipyard building overlooking the harbor, glass and cedar, open to the sea breeze, designed for sunlight and community. Inside, young engineers and veterans worked side by side on renewable projects, mentorship programs, and education grants that stretched across Atlantic Canada. On one wall hung a simple inscription in brushed steel: "Integrity is energy. Once sparked, it powers everything." It had been Noah's line. Clara insisted it stay. Through the years, Clara Grant had transitioned from CEO to something quieter, steadier, chairwoman of the Grant Reed Foundation, a woman no longer defined by scandal or struggle, but by continuity. She led programs that funded STEM education for underprivileged children and initiatives helping veterans return to civilian life with dignity and purpose. Her office door was rarely closed. She believed transparency wasn't just policy, it was practice. Across the open floor, Noah Reed moved with the calm rhythm of someone who had finally made peace with his own story. As the Foundation's Director of Community Integrity, he had built something that outlasted contracts and headlines, a framework where people could fail honestly, rebuild openly, and still be seen. Sometimes he still fixed pipes in the maintenance wing himself, claiming it kept him humble. The younger staff adored him for it. They called him Mr. Steady. And somewhere amid all the laughter and coffee cups, the story of how it all began had become a quiet legend. The night a stranger at table 9 said yes to pretending, and somehow found the truth. Outside, the harbor shimmered with spring light. On the upper terrace, Elena Reed, now 11, ran barefoot along the wooden deck, hair catching the sun. She carried a camera, her father's old one,
and filmed bits of the city for a school project titled After the Storm. Her voice floated over the images like a soft narration. Dad once told me there are two kinds of strength: the strength to win and the strength to stay true when winning changes nothing.
Inside you, cut to Clara inside the foundation hall, laughing with a group of scholarship students, one girl thus showing her a model of a solar-powered drone. Clara's hair now had silver at the edges, and when she smiled, it was deeper, less guarded. He said people build walls to feel safe, but Mom and Dad, they built truth instead. And somehow, that became home. Noah appeared next in Elena's footage, outside, showing a group of veterans how to set up portable energy panels. His voice carried faintly through the camera mic, warm and patient. You don't fix the world by fighting it. You fix it by listening to the people who live in it. Evening settled softly over the city. From the rooftop terrace of their home overlooking the harbor, Clara and Noah sat side by side on the weathered porch swing. The sky was streaked with gold and rose, the kind of light that made Halifax look like it was floating. Elena's laughter echoed as she chased a kite between the chimneys, the sound mixing with the distant gulls and the slow rhythm of waves. Clara leaned her head against Noah's shoulder, their hands intertwined, without needing to be noticed. I used to think peace would feel like stillness, Clara said quietly, but it feels like motion, just slower, gentler. Noah nodded, eyes on the horizon. That's because it's alive. They watched as the kite dipped and rose, its tail flickering against the sunset. Below them, the city lights began to bloom, one by one, not the glare of ambition, but the steady glow of people who believed in rebuilding. Elena turned her camera toward them, capturing the moment without interrupting it. Her voice, softer now, closed the story. They built truth like others, built walls, and turned it into home. The frame lingered, Clara's hair brushing against Noah's coat, the kite glowing gold in the fading light, the harbor stretching infinite and calm. Somewhere in the quiet, the world kept turning, not loudly, not triumphantly, but truthfully, and in that truth, they had found forever.